is their Cordoba creator of the Leicester equaliser. El Khanous, how much room does he have here? El Khanous going for goal, and he finds it as well. What a turnaround here at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium.
4 minutes, Leicester have soaked up so much pressure. Fatawi jinking feet to get beyond his man, and the header from Jamie Vardy makes it 2.
It's Wood should score. Wood was Knockout. Yes, Anthony Knockout has done it.
Tielemans lining one up. What a goal! What a brilliant goal by Yuri Tielemans! And the Leicester City fans go absolutely potty.
Ball in behind Damian Vardy. It's 11. It's heaven for Jamie Vardy. Hold the back page. Hold the front page. A Leicester player has smashed the record.
Good evening and welcome back to Blue Tinted Glasses, the best Leicester City fan channel on the internet. It is Wednesday night, sorry, it's in my throat. It's Wednesday night, which means it's time for Fox's Den. And again, we're going to be talking about relegation because I don't think people are really interested in the Wolves game. We will obviously touch on it later in the week and on the weekend, but yeah, people aren't really wanting to talk about that right now. No one really cares. So let's continue with the relegation talk. But I will say, Anil, I'll come to you first, mate. I cannot wait to start talking about the future. We'll touch on the future, of course, today, but I just can't wait to start talking about the future.
Yeah, because we need some hope. No hope whatsoever right now. I think you already see it. It feels like can sort of move on with our lives, even though in reality we're probably still going to turn up at the next game with the same squad of players, the same manager, and the same shit show. But because we know. Now we can sort of like plan for the future. And you see already for us, it's more interesting to talk about it.
100%. Doc, mate, we were going to wait to see if someone mentioned it in the chat, but I'm going to fucking say it straight away. Nice haircut, mate. Nice trim.
I've been done fucking dirty by my barber here. I've been absolutely shafted. He was my reliable one as well. He just decided to fuck up the hair this time around, though. I'll grow into it in a few weeks' time, and I'll try and set it up properly, right? I'll adapt, learn, and overcome. Unlike Maresca, if we were to throw some shade at him, right? But no, I mean, I'm happy to be here, though. I'm happy. It's first show I'm having with Chris as well. I've seen him debate with many, so I'm very excited to be on with him as well. It's great to meet you, Chris.
What's the age gap between you two? What's the age gap?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm 21. I don't know how old you are, Chris.
I'm 22. I don't know what Lox is getting at.
Just 1 year.
There's 40 odd years between us. Let's leave it at that, shall we?
I was going to say you've had a bad 22 years, Chris. If that's
can I say thanks for having me on the second best Leicester channel?
Hey, there you go. Somebody actually did say here, awkward with Chris and the.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
How you doing, mate? You all right, Chris?
I'm full of a bloody cold, but apart from that, no, I'm bloody miserable. I mean, I just wish when you said about talking about the future, I can't even get excited about the future because I just don't know what this club's going to do.
Yeah, I think we're all kind of in this weird place right now as well, where don't you just wish the season was finished? Like, nobody can be bothered for these last few games. It's just like I'd rather the season be done. Start talking about the future and all of that. But anyway, it will come. It will come. Just quick.
I'm going to say, I always do, as we all do, a preview show. I'm not going to be doing any more preview shows between now and the end of the season. What's the point?
No. Yeah, exactly, mate. I totally agree. Let's have a look who's here in the chat. Make sure to get your comments in. And also, there is a very important poll in the live chat, so make sure to answer. Craig said, good evening, all. Danuel, evening. Out of picks, yeah, we'll get into your picks, mate. We'll bring them up. Mark is here. Hello to you. David, Kyle, Kunal, Brendan. Everybody's here. Hello to you, Ronald McDonald, as well. Sorry if we've missed anybody out. As you can see by the title, we're obviously talking, like I said, about relegation a bit more. And I asked the guys to try, it's impossible, but to try and put their finger on one thing that is the sole or the main reason for relegation this season. So feel free to do the same in the chat, everybody, and feel free to vote in the poll. Who shall I come to first? I'll tell you what, I'll come to you, Anil, first, because we're all going to chip in on this, and we've all got a lot to say on this, and the chat will have a lot to say. What are you putting relegation down to this season, mate?
Well, it's funny because you asked me this last night and I gave you an answer, but since sleeping on it, I've changed that answer. So I was originally going to go for this man, which is Rudkin, but the answer is in front of all of us. Where does the buck stop? The buck stops at the top. And in this case, it is Top. Top is the blame. He's the one that's ultimately accountable. They treat us like a business, this club. He's the one that owns the club. And ultimately, as we understand, even though I think a lot of us throw blame at Rudkin, well, now there's a lot of stuff coming out that Rudkin and Top are very close, which implies that Top is the one that is making the ultimate decisions. 2 relegations in 3 years. So at the end of the day, it's not to poo-poo any of the things that anyone else in chat is saying or anyone in the rest of the panel is saying, because all of these things are also going to be true. But it's like if there was a root cause, the acorn that grew into this terrible oak that's crap and is blocking our amazing view outside of the house, it's Top. Top is the reason. So yeah, there's many reasons we can get into. I can explain it more, but that's for me what it comes down to.
Yeah, look, I'll come to you first, Chris, because, you know, I know you joke about this a lot, about how much shit Rudkin gets. And of course, you know, he's got so much shit over the years. And I think that's because, I mean, he is the director of football. He is, you know, according to the title, he is the guy who runs the footballing operations at the club. You know, he oversees the managerial appointments, the transfers, and things like that. Of course, Top, we hear, has the final say, but he's advised by Rudkin, it seems. But I actually do agree with Anil, Chris, and I think this is now actually where the focus has shifted in recent months from like a large number of Leicester fans. They're no longer going after Rudkin. They're actually going after Top, because Rudkin's not going to resign. He's not going to just... Well, he could resign, but the guy who has him still in place at the football club, who seems to trust him, who never makes the change, is the owner, Top.
Yeah, I mean, they say the book stops at the top, don't they? And as Anil said, I agree to a certain point with that. And I did a show yesterday about Sack the Board. And the problem is, as far as I understand it, that when Vichai was around, it was always Top and John were together, you know, and they were good friends, and you could go to John and ask his advice. Because you've got to remember, this was the first time these guys had owned a football club. And of course, when Vichai passed, the close friendship that Top had with John, you know, he leaned on him a lot. And, you know, it's like sacking your best friend, I guess, in a way. And look, John Rudkin is not the only reason we have got relegated. And I don't think you can put relegation onto one thing, whether, you know, it's Top, whether it's John Rudkin, whether it's Ruud van Nistelrooy, whether it's Gladys the Tea Lady. It's a combination of everything. You know, Rudkin didn't go out there and pick the team. Rudkin didn't decide on the formation. You know, Rudkin didn't put Vestergaard in or Cody in or play Justin on the wrong side. And I think he has taken a lot of the blame. But look, with his title, Director of Football, he's going to. And maybe he needs to be moved more to an advisory role for Top and get somebody else in for the actual football side, whether that's Nigel Pearson or whoever. Because obviously it's not working in that role. It's alienating a lot of fans. He won't be sacked. He's too close with Top. They're too good of friends. He's been there through everything that happened with his father for him. And but he could maybe be moved to a different role.
Doc, I want to come to you because, I mean, you know, we spoke about it. I mean, you guys spoke about it on the watch long. We spoke about it last night, but I want to just quickly mention the image that obviously came about again on the weekend. This one here. Now, the reason I'm going to just mention this is because it was Ragsy on the channel who was always saying stuff like Top doesn't care, Top doesn't care, and I was always like, I don't think he doesn't care. I just think he's incompetent, to be honest with you. But the more it goes on, the more there's just no change. And then that image on the weekend, I want to read a comment that we got on the channel yesterday from one of our viewers, and I won't read all of it, but I'll read just little snippets of it. They said, Vishai worked with the same, so King Power, Vishai worked with the same name, but as a skillful, self-made man, knew what side his bread was buttered. He understood what he must do for club and for City to finance his own passion for the sport of kings. The Vishai era was a win-win for all and fully deserved the massive praise bestowed on the man and, by extension, his family. Top, a second-generation rich man, pays lip service to the fan base, wraps himself in a cashmere scarf, and prefers to play polo. I felt sorry for Top, as we all did, and the difficult task he had after his father's death, which, again, we all agree with, massive task. But we will not forget the latest Liverpool game when he and his director of football smiled whilst Rome burned. I mean, I love that comment, Dot. I think they put it perfectly, and it kind of just topped off the whole season and all of the thoughts at the moment towards Top.
Yeah, I think for me personally, as someone who's always, I don't want to say had more faith, but a longer line with Top in terms of when I would call for his head other than Rutkin coming into this season and with the decisions going wrong. I think for me, this summer is, I want to say, the last chance for me to keep my faith in Top, because you can't oversee 2 relegations in 3 seasons and not decide to change anything. And as Chris said, if it's, to keep Rutkin and moving in an advisory position, something has to change. I said this in the watch along. I said it last time I was on here as well, that something needs to change around that. And if it's hiring more people, changing the structure around it, something has to change, and it has to be this summer, because you can't allow it to go on the way it has. And if nothing changes, I think I'm at the point where I would rather risk it with some new owners. There is just always the cautionary tale in football, right? That the grass isn't always greener, but you can't oversee this and then refuse to change anything. There has to be some structural change, because at the end of the day, the responsibility lies with the owner. And when this much incompetence keeps happening, you have to look at Top and say, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to change the structure, or what's going to change?
Yeah, I mean, Anil, I suppose, like, all of the things that we're going to talk about tonight, like all of the different reasons, they all go back to your choice, which is to talk about Top. Like managerial, recruitment, it all eventually does lead to him because he's the main guy. But I think Doc hit the nail on the head there, didn't he? Or hit the head on the nail, as and they'll, we've been saying it for more than a year. There needs to be a structural change. I think initially, and even now, every Leicester fan, I believe, would rather be successful under King Power. We would rather be successful under Top. But there's just not many of us believe that can happen again with Top as the main man.
100%. Well, I've said on this channel before that my gut feeling is that I think we're starting to see the beginning of the end of King Power. Now, that doesn't mean it will happen immediately. Might not happen for 10 years, but I do genuinely think we'll see that. And I think we're already seeing the results of that, which, as you say, is very notable that for the first time in years, people are actually turning on the people at the top, whereas before that would never have been the case. And I think, unfortunately, it's just the core competencies of running a business. And, we've said this all the time, that like Vichai is a self-made billionaire, which is pretty impressive, let's be honest, right, to have achieved that. His son was handed all that for free. And you see this all the time in life, right? It's the same thing. It's like, if you're an amazing footballer, is your son going to be as good? Most of the time, they're not. Occasionally, you might be lucky and get someone like Kasper Schmeichel, but even is Kasper Schmeichel as good as his dad?
Definitely not.
Yeah, right. So even though he's pretty good and pretty impressive that he managed to do all the stuff that he's done, he's still not quite as good. So, he hasn't, and the thing is, he hasn't got that experience. And I have to say, I do actually think that Vichai, the reason why he bought Leuven is that originally Top was supposed to be in charge of that. And I think that was his idea. It's like, I'm going to give Top this club to run for 10 years. It doesn't really matter if it goes wrong, but then he'll have learned it firsthand, and then he can slowly take over, because he knew that was going to happen. But of course, that's got fast forwarded. And so you're doing it. Now, I think Chris's point as well is bang on as well, is that because he is like so friendly with Rudkin, you see this happen a lot in businesses as well. It's almost like, don't start a business with your mate, because are you going to let them get away with things that you wouldn't otherwise? I've told you firsthand, just so you guys know, I started like a company as well, got VC money to do it and everything. And one of the co-founders was someone who was a really good friend of mine. He isn't with us anymore, right? But I will say that for me, it was a mistake that, I realized it quite quickly, but I didn't actually do anything about it for years, honestly, because it's quite hard to say someone who's your mate going, oh, by the way, I know you're my mate, but I think kind of crap. And it might be something like one of us has got to go, right? So it's a tough decision. I don't think he's got it within him. There's so many kind of comments there as well about, is he ruthless? Not, you only really learn that from being savvy and being a businessman and having those kind of like peaks and troughs and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, everything does go back to him. And if like I say, he's actually lucky that I think he's got the majority control of Leicester, so he can't actually be pushed out, because otherwise it's happened to even Steve Jobs, who was CEO of Apple, got kicked out. Then they realized they were idiots and they brought him back, but they did still kick him out. It's happened to even to some of the top people. And if he did have to answer to people who had an overwhelming majority or whatever like that, I think he would be forced either to start doing things like removing Rudkin or Whelan or people underneath him, or he himself would get removed. And so now I think, unfortunately, anyway, he's either like, we've got hope, as you say. Everyone, I don't dislike him. I want him to succeed, right? But he's got to learn quickly, because otherwise the fans are going to turn on him. Because where does this end, right? Like, if we keep yo-yoing, then one year you're not even going to go up, and then you're going to stay mid-table, and then Blackburn for me is the story to be avoided. They had Jack Walker, a really rich guy that invested in the club. They won the Premier League, had an amazing team: Shearer, Sutton, Sherwood, Colin Hendry. And where are they now? Just championship mediocrity.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned Blackburn. And talking to another club, I want to bring this up quickly before we move on. This was something I came across yesterday or the day before on Twitter. So this is actually a Cardiff City fan who wanted to do a little thread, a post online of what's going on with them at the moment. And let me just read a couple bits here. This will be my 6th relegation I've watched, but it feels like the worst by a mile. He said, well, how has it got to this point? You can point the finger directly at our owner. Vincent Tan has poured millions into our club. Even this year, it is reported that we have a top 10 wage bill. But since the issues with Ian Moody, don't know the story there, he has refused to put in place a modern football infrastructure. This has led to most managerial appointments being an absolute disaster. It's not worth spending the money if you don't get the right people in place to spend it wisely. I don't know about you guys. It sounds very, very, very familiar. And it's look, we're not the first club to be going through what we're going through at the moment, and we won't be the last. But, Chris, there's, I mean, our situation sounds very similar to that, because people say in defense of Top all the time, he's still putting money in. He's still writing off debts and things like that. But, for me, as that guy just said, it doesn't matter what you're spending if you're not spending it wisely and if you've not got the right infrastructure.
No. The funny thing is, I actually used to work for Blackburn Rovers Football Club.
No way.
Yeah, not as a striker, I have to say. Alan Shearer kept me out of that. But no, but when I worked for them, they'd actually fallen into the second tier. Jack Walker at that point was still the owner. But you know what he had? And I can't remember the guy's name. I think it was somebody Williamson. But he was the best chief executive at that time. He won awards. Jack Walker, because of his age and everything, had very little to do with running the club. He left everything to this number 2. Unlike say Susan Whelan, who just looks after the non-football side, and John Wilkins out of football. This guy ran everything, and he was there when they won the Premier League. He was there when Jack Walker came in. He knew his stuff. I think he actually left and went on to another club, or the chicken people sacked him. But that was the funny thing, that Walker was not involved on that side. Yes, I'm sure he would have had, if you wanted to pick the phone up and say, what the bloody hell do you think you're doing? He's the owner after all. But he left, generally the running to a man who knew what he was doing. And I don't think Top has got anybody that can fulfil that position. Look, we all love Top and the family for what they've done. And I found this out yesterday when I said, let's sack the board. There's like 5 family members on the board. How do you sack your family members? Excuse me. And how do you sack Top? I don't know, did he sack himself or whatever? He needs to maybe take that step back and get a good number 2 in. So he doesn't know what they're doing, because he had no idea about football before he bought Leicester. Really, let's be honest with you, no idea about running the club. But look, we love him. I think we'd all love him to stay, and he can still own the club and still support us financially on that side. But like I say, what he needs, as they had at Blackburn, was a really good number 2. Because I tell you what, all their trouble started at Blackburn when I want to say the Wenger boys. It wasn't the Wenger boys, was it? It was the Venkis. The Venkis bought them and got rid of this guy, and then it all started to go wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. There's an interesting comment here. Top is in a unique position where if he just made the basic decisions, like having a transparent review, bringing in a DOF and setting standards, most fans would get behind him again. This is the crazy part. If we got a statement tomorrow which said John Rudkin has been relieved of his duties as director of football, mate, the fan base would be like buzzing, and they'd be like, yes, finally Top's made the right decision, blah blah blah. I'm not saying that's the decision he needs to make. There's obviously other ones as well, but I'm saying if action like that did take place,
can I add to that as well?
Yeah.
I think more than that as well. What's crazy as well is that I think that they have a very dim view of the fans, and that they think, they're only interested when we're winning, and if we're not winning, so they're moaning now, but don't worry about it. They're such simpletons, right? But they don't understand the bigger connection. That's true in business, but that's not necessarily true with clubs, right? There's many stories, like mainly more in Europe than the UK, but there's things that like fans have helped build the stadium, or like I remember Union Berlin at one point, their fans donated blood so that they could afford stadium repairs. You can't make this up, right? That's why they had this kind of 50+1 rule. So I think that they are under the mistaken misnomer that the club only wants success and they've been spoiled because of the title win and they're just moaning sort of thing. But actually, I think it's the lack of connection. Like, as I say to you, if at the start of the season, they'd have come out and said very transparently, right, look, we've got huge PSR issues, so we can't spend. And because we can't spend, we realize that this is a very big danger for us to be competitive this season, right? But we need your support and yada, yada, yada. They get a PR person, get everyone behind it. You could create some siege mentality. And people would be like, look, for what you did for us, and we understand, everyone's going to get behind you. I'm sure there would be a few dissenters, but I think the majority of the fan base would be behind the owners. But I just think that because they won't go that way, it's even worse. And so they're actually digging their own grave. When, like I said, it's like, of course, people will ultimately want success, but I think we want to be along with them for the journey. Whereas that's not the way that they do things. It's like, we don't want anything to do with you. You just shut up and buy this, slot that we give you, right? And that's it.
Yeah, I mean, in the championship as well, when we were winning, and even in the good periods of the Enzo era, you still had people not complaining at him, but complaining at the board and wanting Rutkin out, right? It's even when the times are good and you're enjoying watching the football every week, there will still be these complaints, because until they get addressed properly and we see action and not just words in a matchday magazine once every half a season from Kuhn Top, this won't change. And it won't change if we're battling for Europe in 5 years or if we're in League One. It won't make a difference unless we've seen the action being taken to move us in the right direction.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, people say that this is only outsiders and KPFC fans, I think people call them now. They've been saying that, it's only because we're losing and we're getting relegated, blah, blah, blah. But no, literally last season, there was a banner, in the stadium, which was something like board missing or something like that, right? And it's not just... People can see into the future. Football fans, some football fans like to look into the future. They can see when things aren't going very well and where it's going to end badly. And I think that's where a lot of us saw it going. Okay, Doc, hitters, mate. Hitters. What are you blaming relegation on, mate?
I went to the drawing board here because there are many decisions and mistakes and lineups, tactics, and whatever you can look to pinpoint. But I thought I wanted to go back to not just picking at Rotkin or Top, but the main decision that they have made or process that has gone wrong that has left us now relegated again. And I went back to the beginning when we lost Enzo Maresca and the process of replacing him. You could say what you want about Graham Potter, who we were also heavily linked with, and the other candidates we had in the air. It is, I think, a fact that we went with the wrong manager. And I think everyone probably agrees with that, right? It's not if you want Graham Potter or anyone else instead. It's more the fact that you have the time to find the replacement for the manager who was very strict in his ways, very set up and disciplined in how he wanted the game to unfold. And you bring in a manager who seemed like a lovely guy, but whose whole philosophy was to, you has received the ball in this area, and you now have the freedom of expression to make the right decision yourself. The full 180 they ended up doing in that process in terms of who they wanted. And there were all these rumors like the Fabrizio Romano tweet about we were discussing with Graham Potter. So we were definitely deep in those discussions. But the main thing about this process is the fact that we ended up with a manager so far detached from any resemblance of Enzo Maresca, who the players clearly loved to play under. They loved the structure, knowing where to pass, where people would be in specific scenarios, how to act, when to go wide. Obviously, there is still a bit of expression of freedom under Enzo's system, very slight bits of it, right? You can shoot if you really want to, but the whole 180 there, I think, is the core mistake. Because, I mean, Steve Cooper seemed like a lovely bloke, but he was never going to fit in. And the players could feel it quickly. We fans could feel it quickly as well. And that process, I think, even if I tried to deny it at the time, you had the gut feeling that this could be the beginning of the end of our Premier League campaign.
Yeah, I mean, Chris, this is something, that we've spoken about all season, and especially back when, when when a lot of people were asking for Cooper out and all that. It was a complete lack of consistency with the direction. Some people don't want Enzo ball and they don't want the modern way of playing football. Some want Brexit ball. Sean Dyche, Ant, where are you, mate? You want Dyche in, right? Fair enough, that's fine. But the problem, I think, Chris, is that they went from playing a certain way, recruitment that hot, last season, bringing in players that could play that way and that wanted to play that way, and then going in the complete opposite direction, bringing in someone like Steve Cooper, who was never going to play the same way. And it seems now, and it's, to be fair, it seemed all season, the players just never got on board. And I don't know if you saw Owen Palmer-Atkin, Radio Leicester, actually put some out this week saying that it was a lot of the younger players who just never really bought into what Steve Cooper wanted them to do.
I mean, well, first of all, my choice is exactly the same thing.
Great minds think alike, Chris.
I've got nothing to add, just basically what he said. But, at the end of the day, look, if you look very closely at me, you're going to see me slowly turn into Manny here. I've been speaking to Manny too long because I'm actually starting to see that he speaks a lot of sense. And I don't care whether the young players didn't buy into Steve Cooper's method or not. We fucking pay you wages. If Steve Cooper says you go out onto that pitch riding a sheep, you go out onto that pitch riding a sheep. It's too much player power here. You don't like it? Great, go and play with the under-21s. We'll put you on the transfer list, see who's going to come in for you. Don't buy into the manager's philosophy bollocks. I'm sorry, it doesn't matter. Because if he says jump, you say how high. But the problem was Steve Cooper, and I kind of wanted, I did want him at the time, and whether he would have kept us up, I think we'd have been in a lot better position than we are. I don't know whether he would have actually kept us up or not, but he was the wrong appointment. And this is when it comes back to Anil merging in here. I'm sorry, and I've forgotten the guy's name.
Call me Doc Andreas or whatever you want.
Duck, did you say?
Oh,
yeah.
Quack.
I thought that, but I didn't like to say duck. I thought you might think I'm quackers. Anyway.
Fast twitch, Chris. Fast twitch, Chris. Look.
That's why I don't run a football club. because we literally, we don't know nothing as fans. But when we had Enzo, and look, we're Leicester City. If we have a manager that's going to do well, at some point we will lose him. All right, I accept that we weren't expecting on losing Enzo as quickly as we did, but he's never going to turn that opportunity down. And I don't care what anybody says. If it was any of the four of us, we'd have done exactly the same that Enzo did. Pay packet, the better players that he's going to be playing with, etc., etc. The problem is that Cooper, he was the wrong manager at the wrong time, or possibly the right manager at the wrong time. We needed somebody in Enzo's what's the word I'm looking for here? In Enzo's style to take over from Enzo. And then it comes back to top and the board. Is that they should, when you appoint a manager, you should have a list of people in mind that will carry on that same way should your manager leave. No guarantee you're going to get them, of course. But so that when manager A leaves, manager B comes in playing pretty much the same style. Because we've said this, every time you change a manager, a new manager comes in, doesn't like the players that the last guy bought, so you've wasted all that money probably on transfers, doesn't want that style, so you've suddenly got a left wing back and he doesn't want to play left wing backs, Victor Christensen, Enzo Maresca sort of thing. So you just up shit creek every time you change your manager. What Enzo was doing, and I love this for Enzo, he was getting the whole club playing the same way from the under whatever it was, he's right up to the first team. And so when he walked out, the club should have had a list of people saying, right, this is who we want. Now, I was speaking to Rob Tanner last night, like I say, and apparently they were after Potter again when Enzo left. But he was basically just taking too long to decide, and they wanted somebody in quickly for pre-season. Whether Potter would have been the right answer, I mean, West Ham are worse off now under him than they were.
Definitely.
Loppy Toppy, whatever he was called. But I think stupid name that he had. But when you look at it, you've got to have that plan, and this is where you need somebody with a bit of a bit of football now, so that John Rudkin hasn't got. That can say to Top, right, okay, so he's walked, he's gone, we've lost him. Here's 5 managers that would fit into his jigsaw very, very well. So the appointment of Steve Cooper, not Steve Cooper himself, but the appointment of Steve Cooper was the problem, as was therefore bleeding back to top and the board as well.
Yeah,
news at 10.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? Because that's why I went back to this as the core issue of the season, because basically every single era, except if I was pointing at Rudkin and Top from the very beginning, stems from that issue. The recruitment in summer, well, the manager has the final say. Cooper wanted Premier League experience in Jordan Ayew and Di Cordova-Reid. Had it been Ruud in the summer, it might have been a different player. Had it been Carlos Corberan, it would have been different players potentially. Yeah. Had it been any other manager, the players would have been different. And to me, all the issues stem from that. Because I agree with Chris, this is not the right time to pluck up the root when you're trying to sustain yourself in the Premier League just coming back up. That's what you do when you get relegated, right? That's when we just pulled up the siege, changed the way this club really worked. We got Martin Glover in after the relegation season. He came in, I believe, in the winter transfer window after gardening leave with Southampton. So things were changing structurally in the club. And that's when we decided to get a manager who could help us with that in Enzo Maresca, right? From getting the kids to play the same way all the way up until the main team. And then because you fumble the replacement of him so much, you completely ruin it all again. I think Cooper was a great guy, and I think, and I do like some of his ideas. I'm not against him, but it's just the worst signing you could have made. A worse manager that played more the system of Enzo ball or a similar system would have done better than Cooper did. I have no doubt about that.
Do you think that the guy that replaced Cooper should have been more into Cooper's style?
No, I don't think so.
Nah, because the problem was, Chris, the squad was so committed to the Enzo style, tactical, the style of football. I think the problem also comes a bit with the squad. They are definitely, as you also said, too stuck up their own arse, right? They're too high and mighty, saying, "Oh, I like this system. Whoever you guys bring in, I don't want to do the expressive freedom here. I want to sit and play the football we did all last season." And that's on them, and that's not okay in my opinion either. But the problem is, when you're coming into the Premier League, we know how hard it is to sustain it. That's not the time for a complete strategic shift in how you want to play football. And that's why, to me, the recruitment was so wrong. Because I think had we gotten Ruud in the summer, it would have been better. I don't think we would have stayed up seeing how he's been as a manager, but I think it would have been better, and our performances would have definitely, and recruitment would have been better. I have no doubt about that.
Anil, I mean, this is why I keep saying about consistency, because the club seem to be in like a identity crisis. It's kind of like, well, I say identity crisis. Top quite clearly wants us to play a certain way. He went with Puel and Rodgers, and now Enzo. But they clearly rushed into a decision in the summer to get Cooper. The recruitment, obviously, one season it's for Enzo's way of playing, the next it's for Cooper. That's why you go from signing players like Mavididi and Fatawu to Jordan Ayew and Bobby Reed. It's a big difference. The Brighton model, in our case, not actually the style of football, but I mean more the structure. That is what we should be doing. And we've all been saying this for months.
That's what we're lacking. I'm going to touch on a few points here, but they're all related. This was a good one from Peaches earlier. She said, I don't think you can play Enzo ball with the quality of the squad. Worked in the Championship, yes, but not in the Prem. Got to adapt. So I think that's true. And I think that even if we'd have stuck with Enzo, or we'd have got someone who played a more progressive style, I think we would have gone down. I don't think we'd have gone down with 5 games to go, but maybe we would have gone down with 3 games to go. So maybe wouldn't have been that much better. But what I will say, and it's your thing about the continuity and the structure, is you'd still be building towards this style. That means you're working towards this goal for 3, 4, 5 seasons. And eventually you'll build a squad that is good enough so that when you do come back to the Premier League, you'll be ready for it. Because this is the problem, right? You basically need to have a long-term strategy, because most teams now that are going up from the Championship to the Premier League are getting flushed down the toilet right away. So that's why I totally agree with both what Chris and Andreas have been saying about them getting the wrong appointment. However, Chris also mentioned one thing which is also true, and I think this is the core of the issue. And he mentioned that kind of Rudkin, and I think everyone at King Power, aren't really football people, and they don't, especially they're not modern football people, and I don't think they quite get the nuance. Now, I know that one of the big reasons why King Power pushed so hard to get Brendan Rodgers is I think actually what they're looking for in a coach is they want the manager to be not really just the head coach, but actually to be the guy who is in charge of all of the football on the footballing side. As in, they want them to be someone who instigates the style of play throughout all of the academies. Basically, our director of football role isn't really like that. I've said this many times. It's more of a technical director role. So they don't even think this way. I don't think they actually... They watch the game, but I don't think they have that deeper understanding that like you need to have a style of play or certain ways you want to do it. Like, because the point is that to build a squad, you can't really just do it in one transfer window. It could take 6, 7, 8 transfer windows to really get it right. And you also have to accept there's things like, the average manager has a life expectancy of, I think now 16 months in the Premier League. It's not very long. Right. And players are going to move as well. So as per Chris's point, you do need this list. You need to have, like, even as soon as you sign the player, great, you've just signed Bilal El Khanous. You need to already be thinking, who's the next Bilal El Khanous? Because he could flop and you need to get rid of him. He could be sold for someone else. He could get injured. You need to have like this kind of list of things kind of going there. So I think this is something that's just becoming more and more apparent. And so that is why we were set back, is they were very upset when Enzo left. And I think Enzo would have transformed the club because clearly he had a good idea and he was developing the players and he would have got there. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why he won the Chelsea owners over as well. They're like, damn, this guy knows it all. He could actually be the guy that's here for the long term. So that's why they've given him such a long-term deal. But we need to have someone who's above that in terms of, Pete just going, surely there's already a job title that would cover those responsibilities. Indeed, there is, right? But the problem is that, like, you say potato, I say potato, right? As that American English thing type goes, right? We don't know what the job description is for our director of football at Leicester. And clearly it means something very different to what it means at other clubs, right? And I think that's what they really need to understand, like, who is owning that? So, I think as well, to cover some other points here, is like, they're not as completely clueless as we think they are, right? So I think, for example, say Steve Cooper, right? Just to play devil's advocate, right? Steve Cooper had some success working with young players when he was part of the England setup that was seen as a win. He looks really old, Steve Cooper, but I think he's only 42 or something like that. So he's actually quite young, and he's English, right? He had success in the Championship if we got relegated back down to the Championship. He kept a Premier League team up. He was used to working in difficult circumstances when Forest signed 30 players in 3 weeks or something like that. And here's the thing why I think he got the job is that when he was at Swansea, he did try and play a more attractive style of football, but he changed it when he was at Forest because he realized that he couldn't get a tune out of it. Although, in my opinion, I think that's a mistake that Forest fans still delude themselves into thinking. And I think that Nuno's actually proved that they did have a squad that didn't have to play such atrocious football. They just couldn't play like Man City. They had to fix some in-between style, and Nuno's found that style, and they've done really well out of it. So I reckon he probably did turn up to the King Power. He probably had this trusty PowerPoint, a bit like me, ran through all the players, explained to him what he's going to do, and they probably thought, wow, Steve Cooper's amazing. He actually does look like he's watched our games and knows what he's doing. Let's give him the job, right? He's maybe not our first choice, but he seems like a pretty solid pick. So let's go for him, right? But then, unfortunately, it's not transpired that way. And I mean, my always big thing with Cooper is I do think with any manager, he decided to change the tactics even in pre-season. That's why in pre-season, you could see all the players were absolutely baffled. They were like, lad, what are you doing? We've just won the Championship playing this style that everyone loves, and you want to change it, right? If he wanted to change it, the smarter thing to do would be to wait for 5, 6, 7 games and seeing that we're losing all those games and go, hey guys, look, just hear me out, right? Maybe we need to adapt from playing Enzo ball and you need to go to my system of being a bit more defensive. And if that would have happened, they'd probably went, yeah, you know what, you're right. It kind of sucks getting beaten 3-4-0 every week. Let's change it over. And they didn't. So, yeah, I agree with that. And it's something that we need to change, but I don't see how they're going to change it, right? Because for me, the obvious answer is that Rudkin can still stay. I would change his, he could even be called head of King Power Sports or some bullshit like that, like French, right? But bring someone who's actually got experience. I've seen a few people mention Ralph Rangnick. I think that's dream situation. It's not going to happen like that. But I just think someone who's like semi-competent and they've got experience of doing that. I will say, and this is what you said at the top of the show, Locks, why people are excited, is there does seem to be, I can see the light at the end of the tunnel for how Leicester get out of this. And that is actually Seagrave and the academy. Because normally when you have an academy, it doesn't just start producing talent right away. It takes a number of years. Now, if we're led to believe, all of a sudden, there might be a bit of a generation coming through. And actually, if we're in a championship, we will be forced to play some of those players, which might actually be good. So if they can truly turn the club into more of a sort of Dortmund, Ajax, Benfica, Sporting are very good for this as well, where they both develop their own players or find gems like when they're 13, 14 around the world, bring them in, develop them. And now you've got a constant conveyor belt of generating talent that either goes into the first team or gets sold so you can reinvest. And I think that has been the plan all along, by the way. I think that is actually, doesn't get credit for it, but I've got a feeling that Rudkin probably did push for that. I think that's how he saw the entire setup because he's always been pretty close with young players. So if that happens, that is how we'll get out of it. But, you know, it's not guaranteed that that's going to happen. And at youth team level as well, as you're seeing, there's no guarantee that Jeremy Mongo will stay, right? These things happen. You know, people forget that even Barcelona lost Cesc Fabregas to Arsenal. There's all sorts of stuff that can happen there. So there's never a guaranteed shooting. So maybe that's the sort of strategy. But still, they need someone who has an idea of what the style of play should be. But they also need to be like acknowledging of like trends in football. Because, for example, again, people have said here that right now people keep like Conscious had a really good comment earlier saying, oh, like Enzo equals boring but modern, and you know, Daesh is the opposite end of the spectrum. But it's not as black and white as that. There's quite a great area in between. And I would say even now in the Premier League, by the way, the teams that are going to finish first, second and third are not the teams that are first, second and third in terms of possession. The game has moved away from that tiki-taka style and it's gone a bit more. Forest are the exception because they were like us when we won the title. They're 20th in terms of possession, right? But even Arsenal, I think, are like 5th and Liverpool, I think, are 6th or something like that. So people realize you need to keep the ball sometimes, but you can't just Guardiola it either. You need to be physical and direct. Anyway, thanks for attending my TED Talk. Comment to get more on the Patreon, whatever. There you go.
I was gonna say, Chris, you know, when Neil mentioned the light at the end of the tunnel is potentially the youth and Seagrave. I mean, you know, I saw this earlier. Ruud van Nistelrooy believes Leicester should build their promotion campaign around homegrown players next season, regardless of whether he is in charge. You can see here somebody said ironic coming from the man who waited until we were
Yeah,
already dead
yeah.
before giving our homegrown talent. But that would again be another thing that fans, because I think, Chris, you're going to do a watch along for the Wolves game. I guarantee you, the most excitement you're going to have is seeing Jeremy Mongo come off the bench and seeing what he's about.
My most exciting moment I'm going to have is reading Playboy while the game's so boring. Before I come on to that, and look, we all know Ruud van Nistelrooy just talks bullshit. He says what he thinks will sound good at the time and what might get him off with the reporters. What I want to go back is to something Neil said about players coming through, and we should have the same prospect with managers. Look, who's been the most successful manager in the Premier League? It's going to be Sir Alex Ferguson. What happened when he left? Exactly. Before the Premier League, and I know this all for somebody like Doc, there was football before the Premier League. But before that, I believe there was. But the most successful team before Fergie and Man United were Liverpool. And they kept that for years. And what they did with their managers was, when one manager left, the assistant manager was moved up to be manager. They called it the boot room at Liverpool, and it kept them on top. And they won numerous. They were the Man United of the day, and maybe that's what we should be doing with managers as well. Whoever we get in as the next manager, all right, he'll want to bring in his own number two. I get that, but look, Ranieri had two number twos. Was one of the reasons we did so well under Ranieri was the fact that Craig Shakespeare was still there to provide some continuity. So instead of getting a brand new manager in every single time, have a like we did. We tried it with Mickey Adams, didn't we? And
Dave Bezant, yeah.
Dave, oh God, yes. But
just quickly, Chris, though, Enzo took all his staff with him. We never know. Maybe they did that for one of them.
I'm going to say there's going to be exceptions to every rule.
Yeah.
So pedantic, Neil. I know what you mean, and that didn't help.
What Manny says, Chris, Willie Caballero was at the club.
Yes,
I mean,
yeah. And look, Enzo did take everybody, and that was one of the shit things as well, because there was nobody there to help Cooper when he came in. But I think that's another structure we should set up. We should look at what's worked for other clubs well in the past. Man United never did it. In fairness, look how many assistant managers at Man United went on to be managers in their own right, some more successful than others. Molly, whatever.
Most of them crap.
Crap. But, it worked, like I say, for Liverpool. And then you get that continuity. So not just bringing in a manager who carries on the same style, but bringing on a manager who knows the players and the style.
To add on to that, right? I mean, in Denmark, it's currently I don't want to say a trend, but it's becoming more and more popular that their clubs recruit from inside their own coaching system, right? I think last year, a Brøndby assistant got hired for Aalborg, one of the bigger clubs who had been relegated the season before, got them promoted. He just got sacked last week, though. The city I live in, their current manager, he took over when the last manager left. He was his assistant. They are now fighting for promotion to the top division. Copenhagen, when they sacked Jes Torup, they promoted his assistant. 2 years later, that assistant has won them the cup, a league, and for the second time only in club history, got them out of a Champions League group stage. Brøndby have just, over the winter break, sacked their main manager, hired his assistant, a young up-and-coming manager, who they had some growing pains in their first few games. They are now the most informed club in Denmark after, if you look at on the past 5 games, and they can definitely play some good stuff, and many of their academy kids, who he's also worked with, are getting more minutes as well. So it's definitely a trend over in Denmark. I really like the idea of it. But obviously, if you don't have the structure and have the development of your coaches through the youth team, it's hard to know if you have the faith in them to back them with the first team job, right?
Yeah. I'm just coming back, Locks, to the point that you were saying. Next season, we could have a transfer embargo. We could have management plans, points deductions. So we may be stuck with having to use these young players. which we are being told are having amazing games at their own clubs and what have you. As bad as Frank Lampard was as a manager, his most successful stint at Chelsea, he got them into the Champions League or the Europa League when they had a transfer ban and they had to play with the youngsters. And then the next season, when he was allowed to go and spend some money, that's when it all went wrong. So it probably isn't the worst thing. I don't believe a word that comes out of Ruud van Nistelrooy's mouth. Like I say, he changes that more than he changes his underwear. So I don't believe a word he says, and he says just what he thinks people want to hear. But getting rid of the deadwood, using the youth to come through, it might. I mean, I spoke to a Leeds fan the other day, and he said, "You know what? Although they could be sacking Daniel Farke, couldn't they? So he could be on our radar." But
no.
Where's Manny when you need him? He actually said to me, this Leeds fan, he said, it might not have been the worst thing us not coming up. We got rid of players that, all right, didn't want to be here, whether we wanted them or not. If you don't want to be here, then go. We've got a lot of money for them. But it gave us another year to sort the club out. So that might be the best thing for Leicester. Get rid of a lot of the deadwood, blood the youngsters, maybe not go up for a season. I know financially you want to go up, but it isn't going to be any good if we go straight back up and come straight back down again.
Yeah. I wanted to bring this up. So we did the poll at the start. And why were Leicester relegated? So obviously I named some reasons there: recruitment, managerial appointments, player performances and errors, PSR limitations. Recruitment was number one. So let's talk about that. Look at this here. So Leicester, the two relegated teams. Obviously, you
shocking.
can see how. Yeah, I mean, you can see how good the last squad was compared to this one, but. For example, Fass, Luke Thomas, Samare, those three are obviously still at the football club. Obviously, Vestergaard was still around as well. So was James Justin back then and now. But, of course, the squad is weaker this year than it was that year. But, Anil, the squad is weaker this year than it was last season.
That's what I was going to ask you. I was going to ask you if you could bring up the team at the end of last year when we got promoted.
I'll do it. Yeah.
Because in my honest opinion, we were stronger in the Championship than we were in the Premier League, which is bonkers, but it's true. And maybe even I'd go as far as saying the squad, especially after the first transfer window.
Did you see what the link was there, Anil, between those two teams? Wow, bloody phase. It's all his fault. That should have been an option, Locks.
But you know what I won with 100%, Chris? It wouldn't have been fun then. It would have gotten all the votes.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I see why recruitment won, because that's the glaring issue. I think from what I've read at The Athletic from Rob Tanner, right, and about how the recruitments work, again, we don't know this for sure. But if it's the manager who has the final say, that's why I decided to go with the managerial recruitment, because if the manager doesn't have good talent ID, that very clearly bleeds into our recruitment, which has definitely not been good enough.
Another structural issue at the club, that sounds like that.
Yeah, a structural issue, man. Definitely things that need to change. I think just one last point while Locks finds the formal squad. I think the only place where we maybe have a good structure now is the development from youth team into first team with Andy King there to help them progress from U21s to the main boys. But that's the team that got us promoted. I mean, that is a
definitely
better. That is. I'd rather have that starting this week than I would the current squad players we have available.
Yeah, because you got Ricardo and Fatawu in there, and Dewsbury Hall. Those are three of the best players in the Championship last season.
I missed that song, man.
Yeah.
And after all,
about phases again.
He was prime Maldini in the Championship.
Just quickly on this, though. Yeah, so with the recruitment as well, the thing is, right, is that even if, right, we'd have got a better, quote unquote, better manager or a different style, we could have recruited players and they again may not have worked out. But again, what I'm saying is that we knew that there was always a chance that even if we had a dream window, it would have still gone badly. right? But we wanted to be in a position where the people that we have either retain their value or are going to be good in the championship. So this is the worst of all worlds, because now we're going down with players like IU and Bobby Reed, who maybe some of the others, right? But we're not being able to shift them on, which is what we want to do. Yeah. Or even worse, I think, is like then some of the players that we did sign, like both Okoli and Skip, if we're going to outlay so much money on them, I still cannot believe, even with Cooper, that he wasn't really playing them. I mean, all right, maybe to be a bit more fair to Steve Cooper, he did start introducing those players after a number of games, right? He did bring Okoli and then he did bring Skip in. But yeah, I'm just saying is that, like, you know, that was an issue as well. So again, it comes down to having your direction, understanding. I mean, we'll see how it ends for them next season. But Ipswich, I think other than Sammy Schmodix, they didn't sign a player over the age of 25. So they're going to go into next season with the Championship All-Stars. I'm sure they will lose a few players. Looks like Liam Delap's going to be on his way. But otherwise, it's like they're going to be in a really good position. And then they'll go up again. And they might be good enough to stick in the Premier League again. Or maybe they go down again. But if they keep doing that, eventually you will build up a squad of good enough players that you should be able to crack it and stay up there when someone has a bad season. Whereas I think, unfortunately, with Leicester, it feels like we're just going to be going down this thing where, like, oh, it failed, change the manager, change the entire strategy again. Do we go up? Oh, no, it didn't work. You know, it's just you're not building towards anything. I think this is going to be my thing as well, is that, like, even if we do go up, right, 2 years from now, we could be having an even worse season than we just had now, right? Because we still haven't got a Premier League thing. So we've got to be thinking a couple of steps ahead, which is quite challenging to do.
Yeah, I mean, there's a comment that you brought up, Anil, or that you starred, here. I mean, Doc, the Red Bull model, they are masters of this. They don't just develop players, they develop coaches. Red Bull set the framework, then train everyone into that system. I mean, Leeds United, hello to the Leeds fans in the chat. I'm sure there's some. You're a bit obsessed at the moment, but it's they have Red Bull involved. It's not Red Bull Leeds or anything like that, but they have Red Bull involved, and that's but having them involved gives them a better chance at staying up next season. They might do bits this summer. I mean, they're already talking about sacking Farker and maybe bringing in a Red Bull coach.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. We'll see what happens there, right? I think Red Bull, you have to give them praise for what they've done. They might be hated throughout a lot of Europe. I know at the very least RB Leipzig not popular in Germany for what they've done over there with how they've gotten to the power, right? But you can't fault the system they've set up to develop young players and to develop coaches. They've definitely had some successive ones that have come through. I think we're in a position where we can definitely do well next season, but it's all up in the air at this point, and it's all about if Top and Rotkin can make the right decision, and that's really the problem, right? With how these past few years have gone, you don't have the faith in them to make the right call.
Spot on.
Yeah. Well, go on, Chris.
No, I'm saying spot on. Totally agree. You can't.
I just want to say though, I wouldn't want us to actually be Red Bull Leicester, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure.
So I would say be careful for what you wish for, because I know as well a lot of fans are like, oh, I just wish that, like, I don't know, Qataris brought us up or the Saudis brought us up like Newcastle, and you would get success. But that's why I think people are saying we prefer King Power. That they obviously did still financially help the club, but I think we did it. Like for example, the reason why I love our title win is it's unique, is it's the proper underdog title win. It's more about what football was supposed to be about, even if we're a shambles and completely fly in the face of what that particular version of Leicester was.
Yeah, Neil, why would you not want Red Bull? Serious question. Why would you not want them to buy us?
Honestly, it's because they're just, I feel like, a copy paste of the same model around the world. So none of their particular clubs feel particularly unique. It's just like, it's just taking the same energy drink and selling it in a different part of the world.
It loses identity. I think if they sponsored our jersey, I wouldn't mind that. And I do believe that's how it is with Leeds. But if
so far, Andreas, is all I'm saying.
So far. But if they completely change the identity.
Yes.
I mean, maybe we might have more success on the pitch. But it wouldn't be Leicester I was supporting. I was supporting a mega conglomerate, which just happens to have Red Bull Foxes in the name or whatever they would change it to.
Do we have...
We don't know.
Could argue that already, to be honest with you. You support...
It's a crazy hypothetical, though. It's a crazy hypothetical.
Oh, Andreas, do you already support King Power FC? But anyway...
Maybe you're right, but at least King Power FC have given me some good memories, and I know what they've done for the community.
If we were on our knees and let's say Top walked away and said, I want nothing to do with this club anymore. The fans have pissed me off. I've had enough. I'm going to sell it. And Mike Ashley popped up and went, you know what? I'll buy. And then Red Bull went, bugger off. We're going to buy. Would you want Mike Ashley or would you want Red Bull? If you're in that position where we're about to go out of business, who would you have? Would you still turn down Red Bull?
I don't want to live in your head, Chris. The nightmare situations you come up with. I thought this was supposed to be a positive stream. No, in that case, I see what you're saying. But I mean, I'm just getting my point. But I mean, just going back to that topic again, that's why I brought it up. I think it's a really good comment from Saul. Is that's I think why the club wanted Jesse Marsh so bad as well, because he had worked in the Red Bull system. So he's like, oh, if we get Jesse Marsh, and even if he's not the most fantastic manager, he could. That's what I'm saying about. That's what they wanted with Brendan. That's what they want with Enzo. They want more than a manager. That's why they wanted Potter as well. They want that person who's got like an infrastructure thing, and they want to be part of a project. Like they actually don't want to sack the manager. They want a manager who's going to be here for 5 to 7 years. Just completely, set it up.
And that would be brilliant, right? But that's not the manager's job as a whole. That's not what you should expect
I agree.
when you're trying to sign manager. You should go for a competent director of football then, like, the one Copenhagen had a few years ago, who completely redeveloped their strategy. He's now at Wolfsburg. He's been bought by them. Why don't I go and buy him? I know for a fact of the matter, he's ambitious.
Let's get it trending. Give us some DOF candidates and let's get them in the mix.
Should we have a coach then rather than a manager?
Well, this is what happened with Ralph Rangnick at Man United. He went there as a manager. He could see this needs to change, that needs to change, but he didn't have the power because he was there as the coach, the manager. Yeah, he didn't have the power. So, just finally, just really quickly here, look at this. I mean, there is. I just compared our last starting lineup there at the bottom compared to the top one, which was last season. I mean, of course, injuries have played a part with Fatawu, for example, but
I'd rather have the first one. I mean,
I'd rather have the first one. I would rather have the first one, absolutely. I know Chris doesn't want either because what phase is there, but you know what I'm trying to get at here, that you've lost Dewsbury Hall, for example, and you've brought in, well, we only play with the 2 at the moment, but let's just say Oliver Skip. The back 4 is basically the same, but with Luke Thomas there instead of Justin. It's frightening. It's frightening that
funny enough, though, Locks, that second one isn't so bad because it's similar to the first one, if that makes any sense. Which was the problem that all the managers have done all season. But you're right. That's why I brought it up.
But it should be levels above, shouldn't it?
Yeah.
It should be considerably better. I mean, I guarantee you, I know they're going down. If you grabbed an image of Ipswich's lineup last season and Ipswich's lineup this season, there would be a big improvement. And we have not got that improvement.
I'm excited to see what happens with Ipswich, though. I mean, we all thought Luton would do well when they came back down, right? They had invested in the future of remaining in the Championship. We might not even play them next year. And I think what happens with McKenna will be interesting to see. I think Ipswich, on paper, are better set up for success than we are. And that's the big worry, right? Next season, we could be aiming to get the title, or we could be happy with getting playoffs. So much can change in these next few months, and it's a bit nerve-wracking because it feels like another crucial season is just ahead, around the corner.
Absolutely. Right. That draws us to a close. By the way, can I just say, everybody watching, there's 161 people in the YouTube chat, and there's only 38 likes.
That's the reason we went down, Locks. People didn't like content enough.
That's the reason. So only 38 likes and 160 watching on YouTube. Just hit the like button before you turn us off. Hit the like button. It's free. It takes 2 seconds at a time. I'm sure most of you are already subscribed anyway. So please, if you can do that, that would be brilliant. Chris, what's going on with you, mate? What you got coming up on LTID? What can people watch?
We have got the prediction show tomorrow, and then Friday, I'm hoping to do another one in my series of Project Resets. Which we're going to be asking how much blame the fans should take for the position we're in.
Oh, that's going to be a sensitive one.
Playing with fire there.
Friday at 7, hopefully, fingers crossed.
Well, I suppose you go on.
No, you can find it on LTID TV, on YouTube, and all the socials.
Neil says, I thought the likes and dislikes.
I can apologize, guys. I came on today and I warned everyone. My barber has done me dirty. I've been absolutely bamboozled. I even trusted him. I've been there for about a year now, and this is the first time he just fucks me over like this. But give it a few weeks.
I've never met you before. I've no idea what I'm comparing it to.
Andreas, you need to get a director of hair into that flat of yours. Make sure there's continuity, because you don't just want to go for a complete style change. You've got to think, look, if we're going to consider going shorter, we've got to decide how short, have we got the scissors to cut the hair in that way.
We wanted to make a messy fringe, and right now it's just messy. Let's see what happens when I shower tomorrow, and then hopefully pray a bit to God for it to turn up all right, because it's absolutely shambolic right now. It's as bad as a Luke Thomas performance against Brighton.
It's as bad as a Leicester fan owning a Chelsea shirt. Right.
Not a Neil, surely.
No, I think it's a Neil, actually. I think it's a Neil who has that.
No,
he's got.
I was in London with some mates who are Chelsea fans and went to watch them play against FC Norwich.
That's not just a one-off quick purchase. That's 78 quid's worth of.
I'm a Dane. You realise how much Danes make, so for me it was just a one-off quick purchase.
You just thought blue and thought that Leicester, didn't you?
It's not a messy fringe. We're supposed to but it looks horrible. It's dead. Can we just end the stream now? My hair is horrible and I want to go cry about it.
Chris, the Chelsea shirt has Dewsbury Hall on the back. I don't know if that makes it worse or better, to be honest with you. I'm not sure.
I'm just dying.
Oh.
There we go.
The Chelsea shirt and then you
right.
You killed me off, Duck. You killed me off.
Absolutely. Right. Okay. As I said, make sure to hit the like button. Everybody, make sure to hit subscribe. We'll have a video coming out tomorrow. We'll be back on live probably Friday, unless Rude's sacked in the next hour. If he's sacked, I'll tell you what. I'll make next time Duck goes for a haircut, we'll live stream that as well. Cheers all. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and we'll see you soon. Bye bye.